Miss Maya, Penelope whispered, her 8-year-old voice shaking as she stared at the small, corroded piece of metal in Maya's trembling hands. What? What is that thing? Maya's throat tightened. Blood and tissue still clung to the fragment, evidence of what she'd just done. Evidence that could send her to prison. It's a piece of old medical hardware, sweetheart, Maya said, her voice barely steady. It's been sitting in your spine since you were a baby. It was never supposed to stay there. Penelope's breathing quickened, her small hands gripping the bathroom sink. Is that why I can't walk? Maya knelt down, meeting those wide, hopeful eyes. Eyes that had seen too much disappointment for someone so young. I don't know yet, Penelope, but this was pressing on your nerves, crushing them. And now that it's out, she paused, the weight of what came next crushing her chest. We need to get you to a hospital, right now. Behind them, the mansion clock chimed. 2 hours. That's how long Maya had before Gregory Hartford, tech billionaire, Penelope's father, came home and discovered what his daughter's caregiver had just done. 2 hours before, Maya would have to explain how she, a woman with no medical degree, had performed a procedure that could either save Penelope's life or destroy Maya's entire future. Hey everyone, welcome to VicTell, where we tell stories that don't just entertain, but transform the way you see the world. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. 10 weeks earlier, Maya Richardson stood at the iron gates of the Hartford estate in Connecticut, staring up at a mansion that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Stone and gardens, a circular driveway with fountains that probably cost more than Maya's entire apartment building. Windows that stretched from ground to sky, reflecting clouds like the house itself was part of heaven. But Maya knew better than to be impressed by pretty exteriors. She'd worked in enough wealthy homes to know that money didn't make families less broken. It usually just made the brokenness more expensive. At 34, Maya had spent 12 years as a pediatric aide and nanny. She cared for children with cerebral palsy, autism, muscular dystrophy, developmental delays. She'd seen parents who loved fiercely and parents who saw their children as projects. She'd worked in studio apartments and penthouses, in chaos and in cold perfection. But something about this job felt different. The posting had been specific. Experienced caregiver needed for 8-year-old girl with complete paraplegia. Must be patient, observant, and comfortable with long-term disability care. Warning, previous caregivers lasted an average of 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That line had made Maya pause, her finger hovering over the apply button. Not because it scared her, but because it reminded her of someone. Timothy, her baby brother, who died at 12 years old from complications of undiagnosed spinal trauma. Complications that 3 different doctors had missed because once they'd made their initial diagnosis, chronic back pain, probably growing pains, they'd stopped actually looking at him. By the time anyone realized it was serious, the damage was irreversible. Maya had been 19, fresh out of community college with her pediatric aide certification, working her first job at a children's hospital. She'd come home one weekend and found Timothy unable to get out of bed, his legs not responding, his face gray with pain. Maya, he'd whispered in the hospital 2 days before he died, promise me something. Anything, Tim, anything. His hand had been so small in hers, so cold. If you ever meet another kid who's hurting and nobody's listening, you listen. You don't give up on them like everyone gave up on me. Promise me you won't let anyone become invisible. I promise, baby brother. I promise. That was 15 years ago, and Maya had kept that promise in every home she'd worked in, with every child she'd cared for. She'd been fired 3 times for overstepping when she'd questioned medical decisions. She'd been called aggressive, difficult, too involved. But she'd also saved 2 children from medication errors, caught an infection that a doctor had dismissed, and got one family to seek a second opinion that completely changed their daughter's prognosis. Maya wasn't difficult, she was thorough. And if that made wealthy families uncomfortable, that was their problem, not hers. She pressed the intercom button. Ms. Richardson? The voice was male, tired, formal. Come up to the house. The gates swung open silently. Gregory Hartford answered the door himself, which surprised Maya. Billionaires usually had people for that. He was tall, early 40s, with silver threading through dark hair and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He wore expensive casual clothes, the kind that cost $1,000 to look like they cost 50, and his handshake was firm but distracted, like half his mind was somewhere else. "Ms. Richardson, thank you for coming." He stepped aside, gesturing her into an entryway that could have fit Maya's entire apartment. "I'll be direct with you because I don't believe in wasting time. My daughter Penelope is 8 years old. She's brilliant, reads at a high school level, teaches herself languages for fun, designs elaborate fantasy worlds that could be published novels. She's also stubborn, angry, and has driven away every caregiver I've hired in the past 3 years." He started walking, and Maya followed through rooms that looked like museum exhibits. Everything was expensive, elegant, perfectly arranged, and utterly, completely lifeless. "The last caregiver quit after 2 weeks, Gregory continued, his voice tight. "She said that working here felt like living in a beautiful tomb." Those were her exact words. A beautiful tomb. They passed a sitting room with furniture that looked like no one had ever sat in it. A library with books arranged by color, not content. A dining room with a table that could seat 20 but probably never had. Penelope was born with what they called a catastrophic spinal injury, Gregory said, and Maya heard the way his voice cracked slightly on the word catastrophic. There were complications during her delivery. Her mother, my wife Jessica, he paused, swallowed hard. There was an emergency. The umbilical cord, compression, trauma. They had to do an emergency C-section. Jessica didn't make it, and Penelope. The trauma to her spine was severe. She's been paralyzed from the waist down since birth. They stopped at a closed door, and Gregory turned to face Maya fully for the first time. "I have spent $19 million over the past 8 years, Ms. Richardson. $19 million. The top specialists in the world. Surgeries at Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. Stem cell therapy in Germany, experimental neural stimulation in Japan, genetic treatments in Switzerland. Everything. Every possible option. Every treatment. Every procedure. Every experimental protocol that even hinted at a possibility." His voice was raw now, years of hope and disappointment bleeding through. "Every single one failed. Every specialist eventually said the same thing. Permanent, irreversible, complete paraplegia. Nothing can be done. Learn to adapt. Focus on quality of life, not recovery." He looked at the closed door like it held both everything he loved and everything that had broken him. So Penelope stopped trying, stopped doing physical therapy, stopped engaging with new caregivers, stopped hoping. He turned back to Maya. "She's isolated herself in her room. She's angry at me for bringing strangers into her life every few weeks. She's convinced that everyone's just performing care, that nobody actually sees her as a person, just a problem to manage." "Mr. Hartford," Maya said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you call me?" "My resume shows I've been let go from 3 positions. The references probably told you I'm difficult, that I overstep, that I don't know my place." Gregory's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. "They did say that. They also said you caught things they missed, that you advocated for their children even when it cost you your job, that you treated their kids like human beings, not just patients to manage." He paused. "I don't need someone who knows their place, Ms. Richardson. I need someone who will actually see my daughter. The last thing Penelope needs is another person who stays in their lane while she suffers." Maya felt something shift in her chest. This man, this billionaire who could buy anything, understood the one thing money couldn't purchase: genuine care. "Mr. Hartford, I need to be clear about something before we go in there." "Yes? I'm not here to fix your daughter. I'm not here to make her walk or to make her happy or to turn her into an inspiration story for your friends." Maya's voice was firm but not unkind. "I'm here to care for her, to see her, to respect her, to help her with what she needs help with, and to leave her alone with everything else. Those are very different things. If you're looking for someone to perform miracles, I'm not your person." Gregory stared at her for a long moment. Then his shoulders dropped slightly, like he'd been holding them up for years and finally had permission to let them fall. Ms. Richardson, I stopped believing in miracles 6 years ago. All I want is for someone to treat my daughter like she matters. Can you do that? Yes, sir, I can do that. He opened the door. The bedroom was a study in contradiction. The left side was meticulously organized. Bookshelves arranged by color, art supplies in labeled containers, a desk with neat stacks of notebooks, each one precisely aligned. A drafting table with architectural drawings, rulers arranged by size, pencils sharpened to perfect points. The right side looked like a hurricane had torn through it. Stuffed animals scattered across the floor, clothes in piles, an overflowing trash can, empty food containers stacked on a nightstand, books splayed open, pages bent. And at the window, backlit by afternoon sun, sat a small girl in a custom pediatric wheelchair, staring out at gardens she'd probably never walk through. She had dark curly hair pulled into two messy ponytails, one higher than the other, like she'd done it herself without checking a mirror. She wore a princess dress, the kind with tulle and sparkles, over gray sweatpants. The outfit of someone who'd given up trying to impress people, but hadn't entirely given up on magic. She didn't turn when they entered. Penelope, Gregory said gently, his voice transforming into something softer. This is Ms. Maya Richardson. She's going to be your new caregiver. I don't need a caregiver. Penelope's voice was sharp, much older than 8. I need people to leave me alone. She spun her wheelchair around with practiced efficiency, the kind of skill that came from years of navigation. And Maya saw her face for the first time, heart-shaped, with big brown eyes that looked like they'd seen too much disappointment. A small mouth set in a firm line, shoulders held stiff, defensive. The posture of someone who'd learned to protect herself from well-meaning adults who always let her down. Let me guess, Penelope said, those old eyes assessing Maya from head to toe. You're going to tell me I'm brave. You're going to say I'm an inspiration. You're going to try to be my friend for 2 weeks, then quit like everyone else, and tell Daddy that I'm too challenging. You're going to make me do exercises that don't work and pretend it's for my own good. Maya didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't do the thing most adults did, the performance of kindness that kids like Penelope could smell from a mile away. No, Maya said simply. I'm going to help you with things you can't do yourself and otherwise let you be. Penelope blinked. That clearly wasn't the response she'd expected. That's it? No speeches about staying positive? About not giving up? About how I can do anything if I just try hard enough? You're 8 years old and you've spent your entire life in a wheelchair, Maya said, her voice matter-of-fact but not cold. I think you're allowed to feel however you feel about that. I'm not here to manage your emotions or to make you perform gratitude for my benefit. A flicker of something, surprise, curiosity, crossed Penelope's face before her walls went back up. Fine, rules. She held up one finger. Don't touch my wheelchair without asking. Ever. Second finger. Don't rearrange my stuff or try to clean the messy side of my room. Third finger. Don't tell me stories about other kids in wheelchairs who do amazing things. I don't care. Fourth finger. Don't act like we're going to be friends. We're not. Agreed, Maya said. She held up her own hand. My rules. 1. Don't yell at me unless I actually do something wrong. 2. Don't skip meals just to make a point or punish your dad. 3. If something hurts, tell me instead of suffering in silence to prove you're tough. Penelope stared at her, clearly trying to find the angle, the performance, the lie underneath. Adults didn't give kids like her rules. They gave them accommodation and pity. Gregory looked between them, uncertain if this was going well or badly. I'll leave you two to get acquainted, he said finally, backing toward the door. Maya, the kitchen is stocked. Penelope's schedule is on the counter. Her medications are... I'll find everything, Maya said, not taking her eyes off Penelope. We'll be fine. After Gregory left, Maya and Penelope sat in silence. Not the uncomfortable kind, the assessing kind. Two people figuring out if they could trust each other. You're different from the others, Penelope said finally. How so? You're not trying to make me happy. Maya thought of Timothy. Of all the nurses and doctors who'd tried to cheer him up instead of just being present with his pain, who'd handed him balloons and stickers when what he'd needed was someone to believe him when he said something was wrong. Happiness isn't something I can give you, Maya said, but company, respect, and honest care, those I can do. Penelope turned back to the window, but Maya noticed something crucial. Her small shoulders had relaxed, just slightly, just enough. It was a beginning. The first week, Maya and Penelope barely spoke beyond necessities. Maya learned Penelope's routine, how she liked to wake up slowly, needed help transferring from bed to wheelchair, preferred her clothes laid out the night before so she could dress herself without asking for help, how she took her medications without complaint but hated being watched while she did it, how she could navigate every inch of the mansion in her wheelchair but never went outside. Maya handled it all with quiet efficiency. No commentary, no suggestions for improvement, no attempts to bond. She was simply present, helping with what Penelope couldn't do, respecting her autonomy with everything else. She cleaned Penelope's space but didn't organize the messy side. She prepared meals but didn't comment on what Penelope ate or didn't eat. She was there, but she wasn't intrusive, and Penelope watched her, constantly assessing. By the second week, something shifted. "Why did you become a caregiver?" Penelope asked one morning while Maya was helping her transfer from bed to wheelchair. Maya had learned that Penelope's questions were tests. Answer wrong, be too cheerful, too vague, too fake, and the walls would go back up. "My little brother had a spinal condition," Maya said, not looking at Penelope, focusing on the transfer. "I wanted to help kids like him." "Where is he now?" "He died when he was 12. I was 19. Penelope was quiet for a moment, her hands gripping the wheelchair armrests. "What was his name?" "Timothy. We called him Tim. Did people treat him like he was already broken?" Penelope's voice was small now, vulnerable. "Like his life wasn't as important because he was different?" Maya stopped moving, met Penelope's eyes fully. "Every single day." "Did it make him angry?" "Yes." "Did it make you angry?" "Still does." Penelope nodded slowly, like Maya had just passed some crucial test. "Then you understand why I don't trust adults." "I understand why adults have given you reasons not to trust them," Maya said carefully. "But Penelope, being cautious and being closed off are different things. You can protect yourself without becoming invisible." Something in Penelope's face cracked. Just for a second, just enough to show the scared, lonely 8-year-old underneath all the defenses. "Maybe you're not like the others after all," she whispered. By the third week, Penelope started following Maya around the mansion. Not talking much, just present. Rolling alongside Maya as she worked, offering commentary that was brilliant and bitter in equal measure. "That painting cost $40,000, Penelope said one afternoon, gesturing to an abstract piece in the hallway. "Daddy bought it because the decorator said it was important. He hates it, I hate it, but it stays because we're supposed to appreciate art." "Do you appreciate it?" Maya asked, dusting a nearby table. "I appreciate that it's ugly enough to be honest. Everything else in this house is pretty and fake." Maya glanced at her. "Present company excluded, I hope." Penelope almost smiled. "You're not pretty." "Thanks? That's a compliment. Pretty people lie. You're just real." It was the nicest thing Penelope had said to anyone in months. One afternoon, Penelope wheeled herself to Maya's side while Maya was folding laundry. "Want to see something?" Penelope asked. "Sure." Penelope led her back to the bedroom and pulled out 3 notebooks from her organized bookshelf. She handed them to Maya without comment. Maya opened the first one and felt her breath catch. The pages were filled with elaborate fantasy worlds, detailed maps, character sketches, architectural drawings of buildings and cities, entire languages with their own alphabets. Stories about kingdoms where everyone could fly, so nobody needed legs anyway. About magical places where differences were celebrated, not pitied. Where being unique was power, not weakness. "Penelope," Maya said softly, turning page after page of careful, brilliant work. "These are extraordinary. They're just stories. No, these are complete worlds. The level of detail, the internal logic, the character development. Honey, have you thought about actually writing these as real books?" Penelope's face went carefully blank. "Who'd want to read stories by a kid in a wheelchair?" Maya looked up sharply. Anyone who loves good stories. Penelope, your disability is part of you, but it's not all of you. These stories are brilliant because you're brilliant, not despite anything. Penelope studied Maya's face, looking for the lie, the pity, the performance. She didn't find any. The other caregivers always wanted to talk about my wheelchair, she said quietly, about accessibility and adaptive equipment and what I can't do. You barely mention it. Because it's not the most interesting thing about you, Maya said, closing the notebook carefully and handing it back. Your imagination is interesting. Your stubbornness is interesting. Your ability to create entire worlds from nothing? That's fascinating. Your wheelchair is just how you get around. It's like me mentioning my shoes every time we talk. Who cares? Penelope clutched the notebook to her chest, and for the first time since Maya had arrived, she looked like what she was, an 8-year-old girl who desperately wanted to be seen. Miss Maya? Yes? Would you read me one of my stories? Out loud? Nobody's ever done that before. Maya's throat tightened. I would be honored. That afternoon, Maya read Penelope's story about a princess who ruled a kingdom from a floating throne, who built cities in the clouds where everyone could fly, where being different wasn't a limitation, it was just another way of being. When she finished, Penelope was crying quietly. That's the first time I've heard my words out loud, she whispered. They sound real. They are real, sweetheart, and they're beautiful. It was the moment everything changed between them. Everything changed in week 4. It started small, the way catastrophes often do. Penelope woke up one morning with a low-grade fever and discomfort that Maya recognized immediately. Children with spinal cord injuries were prone to urinary tract infections. It was one of those frustrating realities of paralysis. The body's systems didn't always communicate properly, making infections common and sometimes dangerous. Maya didn't panic. She'd handled dozens of UTIs in her career. She immediately called Dr. Philip Montgomery, the physician who'd managed Penelope's care for the past 6 years. Ms. Richardson, Dr. Montgomery's voice was brisk, professional, slightly dismissive in the way doctors often were with caregivers. Describe the symptoms. Low-grade fever, 99.8. Some discomfort. She's drinking fluids well. No nausea. But she's definitely fighting something. Sounds like a standard UTI? I'll call in antibiotics to the pharmacy. Increase her fluid intake. Monitor the fever. Should clear up in a few days. Call me if it gets worse. Will do. Thank you, doctor. Maya started Penelope on the antibiotics that afternoon. For the first 2 days, everything seemed fine. The fever stayed low. Penelope was tired, but not alarmingly so. Maya kept her hydrated, monitored her carefully, watched for any changes. Then on day 3, everything went wrong. Maya woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of crying. She was in the guest room adjacent to Penelope's. Gregory had insisted she stay close in case of emergencies. And she was in Penelope's room within seconds. The little girl was curled in her bed, tears streaming down her face, her small body shaking. Penelope, sweetheart. What's wrong? Maya was at her side immediately, hand on her forehead. Hot, much too hot. The fever had spiked. It hurts, Penelope sobbed. Miss Maya, it hurts so bad. What hurts, honey? Where? Penelope touched her lower back, well below where her injury was supposed to be. Here, right here. It's burning, like something's on fire inside me. Maya's blood went cold. Children with complete paraplegia shouldn't feel pain below their injury site. The nerve pathways were severed. Pain below the level of injury was medically impossible, according to every specialist who'd examined Penelope. Unless something else was wrong. Penelope, listen to me. Maya kept her voice calm, even as her mind raced. I need you to point to exactly where it hurts. Can you do that? With shaking hands, Penelope pointed to her lower lumbar region. The L2-L3 area, the exact location of her original birth injury. Maya checked the fever. 102.4. High enough to be concerning, especially when the antibiotics should have been working. I'm calling Dr. Montgomery, Maya said. He won't believe me, Penelope whispered, her voice small and scared. They never believe me when I say something's wrong. I believe you, sweetheart, and I'm going to make him listen. Dr. Montgomery was not pleased to be woken at 3:30 in the morning. Ms. Richardson, I'm sure you mean well, but Dr. Montgomery, Penelope's fever has spiked to 102.4 despite 3 days of antibiotics, and she's experiencing sharp, localized pain in her lower lumbar region. That's not uncommon with UTIs. The fever can spike before it breaks. Give the antibiotics more time. Doctor, she's feeling pain below her injury site. Sharp, burning pain. She shouldn't be able to feel anything there. There was a pause. Then Dr. Montgomery's voice took on that tone, the one Maya had heard 1,000 times from medical professionals who thought caregivers were overreacting. Ms. Richardson, what Penelope is experiencing is called phantom pain. It's a psychological phenomenon where the brain creates sensations that aren't actually there. It's quite common in patients with paralysis. The fever and the antibiotics might be causing some confusion in her neural pathways, making her think she feels pain where she can't actually have sensation. With respect, doctor, this doesn't present like phantom pain. The pain is specific, localized, and consistent, and the fever isn't responding to treatment. Ms. Richardson, his voice was sharp now, patronizing. I've been managing Penelope's care for 6 years. I think I understand her condition better than a caregiver who's been there for a month. Phantom pain is extremely common in paralysis patients. It feels real to them, but it's neurological, not physical. Continue the antibiotics. Give them time to work. If the fever isn't down by tomorrow evening, call me and we'll consider changing medications. But Dr. Montgomery, Ms. Richardson, I appreciate your concern, but please don't overstep your role here. You're there to provide care, not to diagnose. Continue the treatment plan. That's an order. He hung up. Maya stood in the hallway, the phone in her hand, rage and fear warring in her chest. She'd heard those exact words before. Different doctor, different hospital, different child. Timothy. Just growing pains, Ms. Richardson. You're not a doctor. Don't overstep. 2 weeks later, Timothy was dead. Maya walked back into Penelope's room. The little girl was watching her with those 2 old eyes, tears still streaming down her face. He doesn't believe me, does he? Penelope whispered. He thinks it's phantom pain. It's not. Miss Maya, I know what phantom pain feels like. I've had it before. This is different. This is real. Something is wrong. Something is really, really wrong. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, took Penelope's small hand in hers. Penelope, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Yes. I believe you. Something is wrong, and I'm going to figure out what it is. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But to do that, I need to do a very thorough examination of your back, your whole spine. It might be uncomfortable. It might hurt. But I need to check everything. Will you let me do that? Penelope nodded, fresh tears falling. You're the only grown-up who's ever asked permission. Maya had learned examination techniques from her years working in pediatric care. She wasn't a doctor, but she'd been trained to recognize warning signs, to know when something needed immediate medical attention. She helped Penelope sit up, supported her carefully, and began a systematic examination of her entire spine. Most of it was exactly as expected. Surgical scars from the emergency interventions when Penelope was born, the characteristic muscle atrophy that came with years of paralysis, the slight spinal curvature that sometimes developed in wheelchair users. But when Maya's fingers reached the lower lumbar region, the L2-L3 junction where Penelope was pointing, she felt something that made her breath catch. There was a hardness there, a small raised area about the size of a dime. It didn't match the surrounding tissue. The skin was slightly warmer to the touch, and when Maya pressed gently, Penelope cried out in pain. That's it, Penelope sobbed. That's where it hurts. Maya's hands were shaking. She'd felt masses like this before. Foreign objects, embedded hardware, abscesses, things that shouldn't be in a child's body. Penelope, sweetheart, when was your last X-ray or MRI? I don't know. Maybe when I was 5. Daddy stopped scheduling them after all the doctors said nothing would change, that there was no point in keep looking at something that couldn't be fixed. Maya's mind was racing through possibilities, through timelines, through everything she knew about Penelope's medical history. Honey, I need you to tell me everything you know about when you were born. Everything your daddy told you about what happened. Penelope wiped her tears, took a shaky breath. There was something wrong during the delivery. The umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. I wasn't getting enough oxygen. My mom, her voice got quieter. My mom started bleeding really bad. They had to do an emergency C-section super fast to save us both, but my mom didn't make it. And during the surgery, something happened to my spine. They said it got compressed or twisted or something. They had to put metal rods in right away to stabilize it. Metal rods, Maya repeated, her heart pounding. What happened to those rods? They took them out when I was 2. The doctors said I was growing and the rods needed to come out. Daddy said the surgery went fine, that everything was removed, but the damage to my nerves was already permanent. That's what everyone said. Permanent damage. Maya's throat was tight. Penelope, do you know for sure that all the metal came out? Did your daddy ever tell you about any complications with that surgery? Penelope shook her head. I don't think so. Why? Miss Maya, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm thinking we need to look at your medical records, all of them, right now. Stay tuned as we bring you part 2. Don't miss it, because the truth finally comes out, and it's far worse than anyone imagined. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and get ready for the emotional storm that's coming in part 2.